Second time that you two have had teams play each other for the national championship. You won 4 together, but you were virtually undefeated in the noontime basketball league when you were on the same team. What made you good teammates, Nick?
Well, I was the commissioner of the league, so I basically picked the best players, which Kirby was one of the best players. And, I also picked who guarded me on the other team. So we had a little bit of an advantage. Called all the fouls, but Kirby was like the leading scorer on our team.
Probably more like leading rebounder. I think it was the competitive side of both of us usually came out in those games, so it was hard to lose once you had the team stacked against the other team.
So how much of what you saw in that field of competition do you see in him as a coach, Kirby?
Well, I see it in his players. You see the competitive fire they play with, you see the leadership, all the intangible things that you want in your team as a coach. I think come out in those teams that we've seen from Alabama. It's very indicative of his personality. That comes out in practice each day that I've seen. So when that comes out, once the game comes, you turn it over to the players.
How about from him?
Well, and Kirby's great competitor. Was a really great competitor in the basketball games, but he was also a great competitor in terms of how he got the players to compete, because I think there is something to be said about players sort of emulate the personality of the coach. And when you're in a leadership position, you have great opportunity to do that. So now you see the same thing in his team at Georgia. The way they compete, the way they play. It almost emulates his personality 100%.
When you know an opposing coach so well, how much of knowledge of his tendencies, of his competitive nature, what he gets out of his team factor in to preparation and game planning?
Well, I think, sometimes you know the other team and you even know what they do, but you don't know when they're going to do it in the game. All right, so, but I think even though you may know it, you know every team that way. That's why you study and prepare for the game to start with, but you never know for sure when they're going to do it. So anticipation and recognition, I think, is what really helps you have success, either side of the ball or special teams. So you really never know when it's coming up, but you also have a tremendous amount of respect because what they do is very sound and solid, and it's hard to take advantage of when their players execute it well.
How have you used that in the meetings that you've had against Alabama as a head coach? How have you used that, or how have you guarded against overthinking it, your knowledge of the Alabama program and their style?
I think very similar to what Coach said is that it's what the players know, right? Because we sit back as coaches and we watch a ton of tape, our coordinators, myself, but what I know doesn't help necessarily Stetson Bennett or Nakobe Dean. I can only impart some of that knowledge, and having players that buy in to it's important to know this is the tendency or this is what they're going to do, but people are trying to break tendencies now too. So now you're thinking one step ahead, and then if you're thinking all the time, you're not playing. So, we're going to do what we're going to do. They're going to do what they're going to do. And then at the end of the day, the players have got to go out and execute at a high level. And that's what you're hoping for. So I don't want to overthink it and start thinking about what they're doing. Ultimately, they're really good at what they do. They're not going to change that much. It's about execution.
Both of you, look, there's storylines between the two of you. That's natural because you've worked together and both of you have had such high levels of success. But both of you talk about it being about the players and not about you guys, and not about legacy, not about breakthroughs. What is the most important thing, given that mindset, that a coach can give to the players going into a championship game, Kirby?
The ability to relax and play. And that's hard to say in this game. The biggest advantage they probably have is the players that they've had in their organization have played in this game. Even the young ones, a lot of them have been around it. Ours, it was 4 or 5 years ago. So I don't want that to be a factor or them to sense that all this nervous energy. They'll be nervous, they'll have anxiety, but to settle down and play and execute because they prepared and we've given them the confidence to go play. That's the biggest thing I want them to take is, man, go play the game, have no regrets, because it's hard to get to this point.
Well, I think it's important that the players know what to do and then do what they know when the game comes. So there's probably a certain sort of emotional balance that gives them the best opportunity to do that. And the circumstances surrounding the game, the importance of the game, whatever you want to call it, is something that can't get that out of kilter. Because if it does, If you get too emotional, you don't make great decisions. If you're not emotional enough, you're not going to be playing fast and have the mental intensity you need. So it's really a fine line to be able to keep what I always say, the main thing, the main thing. Stay focused on what you have to do your job, which is very similar to what, Kirby's trying to say, because you can control what you do. You really can't control what the other guy's doing. All right, so you got to be able to focus to control your execution.
You both have been involved as rematches as head coaches. You guys played Auburn a couple of times, I think in 17, obviously the LSU rematches, and your NFL experience. What's the most challenging part of playing a team a second time, particularly in a small window?
I think to get the players to refocus and to understand that whatever happened in the first game is not going to have any impact in this game. And, psychologically, how do players look at the second time around? And they need to look at it the same way they did the first time around. And again, it goes right back to that ability to have the kind of intensity to go play your best and be your best as a football player in this game. All right, because that's what it's going to take, because that's what the other team's going to try to do as well. So what happened in the last game had nothing to do with this game.
I think, first of all, both our teams have tremendous respect for each other. I think you see it in the way they play. I'm really proud of the toughness and the way, look, in the fourth quarter, we were out of the game, and we had several kids say, "Don't take me out, Coach. I want to finish." And it was the character, the competitive character that both teams have. Not a lot of yang and talking back and forth. It's a physical brand of football, and it's really a competitive brand of football. So when you start talking about the rematch, you start saying, okay, does the team that lost have an advantage, or does the team that won have an advantage? It has no outlay on the game. It should not have any, and psychologically our players have to see plays that they gave up maybe more than theirs. And then everybody says, well, you can't beat a team twice. There's nothing to any of that. It's ultimately how you play in this game.
It brings up something interesting. All of us were really friendly with Trevor Moat, who talked about the mental conditioning. And nothing from the first game does have anything to do with the second game. So why does this underdog thing, whether it's underdog because of the point spread or underdog because you haven't beaten Alabama, why does it work? It seems to give teams an edge. It gave your team an edge first time.
Well, I think you think it gives you an edge, and maybe it does give you an edge in preparation, in the beginning, because players, look, when you have a sense of purpose about what you want to do, that's got to be some kind of an advantage. And if you don't have a sense of purpose, then you probably got issues. Hopefully everybody has a sense of purpose when they're playing in a game like this, or even when they're playing an SEC championship game. But ultimately, players can't allow these things one way or the other. You've heard me use the term rat poison. Mm-hmm. Does that affect you if you're an underdog? Does it affect you if you're a favorite? Does it affect you if, the fan says this or you guys say that? And I think players do get affected by that to some degree, but it's important that they don't allow it to affect how they prepare and how they play in a game, because it has no bearing on the outcome of the game.
You can't let it, right? Because if you're controlled by those, we're both going to be favored in 90%, 95% of our games, him 100%. So you can't let that control anything. You've got to control the mindset and with which you think about the game. And I think Trevor, if he was here today, he's probably sitting there looking over us right now, because he would be thinking those same thoughts.
Coaches obviously evaluate and grade games differently than the fans do. What's the thing that you saw from the first game that you think we've got to keep doing that it was just as good, it's good enough to win when you've evaluated the tape?
Well, we didn't play real well, but a lot of that had to do with who we played, and people forget that. They forget that there's a really talented team on the other side. So for our team, we had not really played anybody that, okay, we gave up this play. Okay, how do you respond when you have plays like that? We really hadn't been in many difficult situations like that. So when you get in those, how do you respond to it? What I'd like them to keep doing is having the competitive nature with which they competed with. All right, but what we got to do better is respond when something doesn't go our way. And that's the most important thing. When you play a really talented team, you're going to have wins and losses within that game. How do you respond to the losses? And I didn't think we handled that well.
When you evaluated the tape from the first game, what's an area you would like to see the biggest improvement?
Well, the number one thing we have to do is, it starts on the line of scrimmage. So if we can't control, especially their defense in the front seven with the offensive line, whether it's a run or a pass, it doesn't really matter. That's going to be an issue because, Bryce is a real key to how we go in terms of how he can manage the game. And I say manage the game. Is it a run? Is it a pass? How do we execute? And he's got the ball in his hands, so he makes those decisions all the time. I think defensively, they have a lot of really good skill players. Explosive plays will have a huge impact on the outcome of this game. And to be able to control that relative to some of the really, really good players that Georgia has on offense is going to be a real key to the game. Controlling the line of scrimmages too, but how many explosive plays people make will have a huge impact on the outcome of this game.
What's the biggest area Bryce has been good all year. What's the biggest jump that he's taken over the course of the season?
People ask me that all the time, and, he played well from the start. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm sure he would say that he's more comfortable and more confident in the offense and probably grown a little bit in how he can sort of recognize what he thinks the defense is going to do. And I think that just comes with experience. But other than that, he was accurate. He threw the ball the right place. He executed the offense very well from the very beginning. And that was the biggest surprise to me. With very limited experience, how would he play early on? And he's played really well all year.
Maybe you've done this before, but I was struck after the game that you went straight to Bryce. Why?
Much respect. I've played against a lot of good quarterbacks in my time as a defensive coordinator, both at Georgia, Alabama, everywhere. And to sit on the sideline and watch what he was able to do, because we do have a good front seven. He and their offensive line did a tremendous job of navigating that. And his decision-making and ability to make plays when things aren't perfect is elite. He is like a point guard dishing the ball out all over the field. And he knows where he's going with the ball. He's very accurate. He has an elite quick release. For a guy that's not great stature, you don't see a lot of balls batted because it's out like that when he throws it. And I just got a lot of respect for his competitive nature. When we're in this business, yeah, we want to win, but I respect competitive greatness. And he is a great competitor.
So how do you disrupt him?
Well, you got to affect him. You got to affect him. You got to affect the entire offense, and that's tough to do. But he's had games that's been affected, but he's always responded. And when guys play well around him, it makes it much easier on him. So we've got to do a really good job affecting him some kind of way, and that's whether that's disguise, pressure. You have to, because otherwise he doesn't get out of rhythm.
I remember talking to you during the season, and you were trying to get more guys to do things the way you wanted it done. What impact did Will Anderson have on that on your team?
I think probably as much as anybody in the organization, probably even more than the coaches, and me included, because we had a really young team to start with, lots of new players, lots of new roles on the team, and we didn't have a lot of older players who were natural leaders. They were good players and they were good guys and they worked hard, but they didn't affect other people. And some of the best people on our team that affect other people are the younger guys. Will Anderson, Bryce, some of the younger guys. But they were a little apprehensive to step up and take that role early in the season because it was like, it's not my place to do this, I'm a young guy. But I think after we got beat, they were more willing to step forward. And I think when they did, that really solidified the chemistry of our team in a lot of ways, because it helped a lot of the younger guys to emulate them and their example.
Fairly or unfairly, most of the season people were waiting on you to switch quarterbacks again. How has Stetson developed as a leader since he's become more entrenched in the position?
I think his play has helped him gain confidence, and those around him have gained confidence in his play. So the two have worked hand in hand together. As you play and you get more reps and game reps, you tend to get better. And at the end of the day, he got a little less than half a season last year, and he's gotten most of this season now. So he's still young relative to playing experience. Doesn't have a ton of playing experience, but he's gotten better as he's gone. He understands things. Biggest thing with him is decision making and the process of knowing what we want to do, and he's done a good job of gaining confidence of players in that.
I've heard both of you talk about maximizing players' potential and seeing them achieve at the highest level. You recruit a ton of 5-stars, both of you do. What does it mean to you as a coach to see the success that a guy like Stetson's had up to this point?
Oh, it's tremendous honor for him and his family, and watch him grow. And I mean, he came on an official visit as a walk-on, and we recruited him just like he was a scholarship player with the intent of bringing him in our program because we thought enough of him. And then he played Baker Mayfield in a playoff scout team. I mean, think about how long ago that was that he did that and was there to prepare for that, and what he's seen since then. And it brings great joy to my heart to see what he's worked and gone through to go to Mississippi and play for a season and gain experience and then come back home. He's never stopped competing.
What's your impression of him? You faced him a couple of times now.
I think he's an outstanding quarterback, really good athlete. He's got great quickness, runs much better than people give him credit for. I think he's a very talented passer. He's very accurate with the ball. And if you don't affect him in some kind of way, he can slice and dice you pretty good. And I think that's going to be the key for us in the game, is that we can affect him in some kind of way. Just like, Kirby talked about affecting Bryce, you do it in a lot of different ways, whether you try to disguise coverages or pressures or whatever it is. But he is a very capable quarterback, and he has played a lot of really good football for Georgia.
How do you come closest to knowing if you've got your team in the right mental place, not only in terms of being ready to play, but in terms of knowing assignments, right emotional pitch going into the game? What's the best indicator for you?
I think how they practice probably gives you the best indicator of, are they making a lot of mental errors? So do they understand the plan? Do they understand what you want them to go execute and what you want them to do? But I think the emotional part of it, really, I never have a great feel for it until almost right before the game, maybe pregame, whatever. You kind of see the pep in their step, and that tells you a little bit about the intensity that they have. But, it's hard to judge, 3 or 4 days before the game.
Yeah, I don't know that you do. I mean, I've never had a great experience of saying, oh man, we had a perfect practice, they did it all right, or some of the weeks where we had a lot of mistakes. A lot of that's based on what you put on them. How hard do you make it? Do you challenge them mentally 2 days before the game and know that you're maybe mistakes, but you get to correct those? And then, pregame and walkthroughs and getting ready for the game, you start to get a gut feeling, but I don't know that it's ever been 100% accurate.
What's the best thing that's happened to your team since the loss to Alabama leading up to now?
Since the loss would be the realization that we're not where we need to be. We had a lot of guys commit to getting in better shape, tired, winded, things like that. So they committed to a group of them coming in, getting extra cardio, building up, going to Miami, conditioning level. We thought would be a factor, and certainly thought it was in that game. And our guys have worked really hard at that. But the awakening of, hey, look, you got to respond when somebody punches you, and how you respond to that punch is way more important than how you respond to a win, in a play, and then the conditioning level of our guys.
What's it like for you when the game's over? Championship game's over tomorrow night. How do you envision the meeting at midfield going, whether it's a win or whether it's a loss?
I have a tremendous amount of respect for, Kirby and the Georgia players, their program. I have a tremendous amount of respect for our coaches and our players. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for great competitors. And there's going to be a lot of great competitors playing this game. So regardless of the outcome, there's going to be sort of a mutual respect and admiration for the competition and the competitors and what they put into it and how they both wanted to try to win. And there's something special about that. And, every competitor wants to win, but there's something special about understanding that and appreciating that.
This trophy, it's enough. I mean, it's a national championship trophy. But given the struggles that Georgia, even predating you and since you've been there, have had against Alabama, what effect does that have, and what would that mean, not only win the trophy, but to overcome that?
I think it would give tremendous pride to the people in our organization and our university and our state and throughout the country. Georgia's a tremendous brand when you look out there. But at the end of the day, our goal is to get the most we can possibly get out of this group of young men, and that's what we've tried to do all along. If that comes with it, then that's meant to be. That's great, and we're going to do everything we can to do it. If not, we're going to come right back and try to do it again. But I try not to put so much on that where it's about the people around the organization or all the people of Georgia Dog Nation. I'm focused really on those young men in our locker room and them being at their best, because that's what gives us the best chance to get the trophy.